Hey guys, welcome back for today's lecture on Wednesday, May 6th. We're gonna get pretty close. I think we'll probably wrap things up either tomorrow or Friday on the chapter, but today we're gonna pick up following the short uh, presidential term of Gerald Ford. We now get new Democratic President Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter is known for his stance on human rights and his peaceful approach to diplomacy. So early on in his presidency in 1977, the U.S. and Panama agree to transfer the control and responsibility of the Panama Canal from the United States to Panama. In 1903, when the canal was built, the U.S. assumed all power and responsibility with it because they were the ones that funded it and paid for it to be built. Panama wanted to seize control of it, and they said if the U.S. didn't agree to do it diplomatically, then they would do what Egypt essentially did in 1957 with the Suez Canal. They said they would nationalize it and take it by force. So the U.S. felt, well, better to do so peacefully and agree to sign it over. And the treaty planned for a slow transition into Panamanian control. And by December 31st of 1999, the Panama Canal would be in Panama's hands. And so that's how that happened. At the end of 1999, Panama assumed all power over the canal. The U.S. still got plenty of use, or still gets plenty of use out of it and benefits from it. And a big reason why the U.S. agreed to transfer it over was because Panama was in extreme debt to the U.S. and they were continuously running up debt, and they didn't have a way to bring in a big amount of income to pay that off. Well, they would bring in income with the Panama Canal. So the canal they would then use to pay off their debt to the U.S. Then we had the Camp David Accords in 1978. It was a meeting between Carter and I think it was Prime Minister of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, and Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin. Now, Egypt and Israel had been at odds for quite some time. We talked about the other day when Egypt and Syria both invaded Israel to gain back land that Israel took from them in the 60s. But the two governments wanted to come to an agreement of peace, and they wanted to settle some of the tensions that were building between the Arab world and the Jewish Israelites. So this is done in a place named Camp David. Camp David is the wooded and country retreat for the President of the United States. It's out in the country somewhere in Maryland. It's just a cabin, or a really fancy extension of cabins, I guess. And for 13 days, Sadat, Begin, and Carter sat in this cabin and they negotiated. And it was contentious, it was heated, and it didn't look like anything would get done. But Carter was extremely fixated on getting this deal done. He was not going to let either man leave without a peaceful agreement. And so they essentially came to an agreement. Israel would return some of the land back to Egypt and Palestine and Syria. In in return, they would get free use of the Suez Canal in Egypt, and they would be guaranteed peace from Egypt, which at the time, Egypt was the most powerful Arabic country in the world and in the Middle East. So getting a guarantee of peace from them was huge to Israel's state of affairs. Now, what this does is it makes the rest of the Arab world mad. The rest of the Arabic countries don't like Egypt doing business for them. They said you can sign peace with Israel all you want, but the fact that you try to do it on behalf of us is not okay. And Egypt is actually suspended from the Arab World League, which was their like alliance, like their version of NATO. And since then, Egypt's power as an Arabic nation has lessened. Now, SALT II happens in 1979. That builds on the first Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty and basically gets rid of all new nuclear missiles. Before it said if you SALT one said that if you wanted to make new ones, then you had to get rid of old ones. Well, now we found that that doesn't really limit anything, so we better just go ahead and cut off all intermediate missiles that can be launched against us. And both countries agree to that. Then Soviet Union invades Afghanistan and fights against the Mujahideen, which was the rebel groups of Afghanistan that were trying to kick out a communist leader. And of course, Soviet Union is going to step in to try and help the communist leader because that's what they stand for. And they fight the Mujahideen for about 9-10 years, and they never end up winning. Like they eventually just get so broke. They get so broke that they are forced to leave without victory, and this becomes known as the Soviet Union's version of Vietnam. The U.S. fought in Vietnam, thought it'd be an easy victory, and then it ends up just being a drain, and they leave, and their objective is defeated. Well, that's exactly what happened to the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. And the U.S. provides some assistance to the Mujahideen rebels, not military necessarily, but like selling them weapons and stuff. And so we basically put the new leaders of Afghanistan in power. Fun fact, the leader of the Mujahideen that we were assisting, his name was Osama bin Laden. So we did at one time assist Osama bin Laden in rising to power. And because of worldwide disdain for the Soviets invading Afghanistan, that following year, 1980, when the Soviet Union hosted the Summer Olympics, 66 countries boycotted, including the U.S., meaning they didn't go. Only 80 countries participated, which is way lower than usual. And then, fun fact, the following Summer Olympics in 1984 was held in Los Angeles. So guess who boycotted those Olympics? The Soviet Union and almost all of the Eastern European countries, and then the other communist countries around the world. It was just a big diplomatic mess. Speaking of diplomatic messes, we have the Iranian Revolution. Iran was, in the early and mid 70s, they're ruled by the Shah, which was kind of an oppressive leader, but he had a good relationship with the U.S. He was a very strong American ally. Well, he's kicked out. There's a coup d'etat against him, and he's replaced by a man named Ayatollah Khomeini. Ayatollah Khomeini is a very strict, I believe, Shiite Muslim. Like very strict to the core, follows the Quran very, very closely. And he leads a revolution, and Iran becomes a very disciplined and strict, or more disciplined and strict Muslim nation. Now, Ayatollah Khomeini hates the West. He hates the modern and industrialized world. He hates the United States, everything they stand for. Basically anything that was Christian related, he hated. The Shah was exiled, or he escapes, I guess. He escapes from Iran before he can face any kind of punishment. And he goes to the U.S. because he's diagnosed with cancer. And Ayatollah finds out that he's in the U.S. and he demands that the U.S. return the Shah so he could stand trial for his crimes against the Iranian people. And the U.S. refuses to do that because they have no diplomatic ties to Iran now, and they're not going to serve someone up just to see them be stoned to death or whatever his method of execution was going to be. So they don't do it. Well, they see that, Ayatollah sees that as the U.S. accepting the Shah's abuses to the Iranian people. So he decides to take revenge, and a group of Iranian revolutionaries stormed the U.S. embassy in Tehran, which is the capital of Iran, and they kidnap and take hostage 52 American diplomats and citizens, which is that picture down at the bottom right or bottom center. And they are held hostage for 444 days. That is well over a year. Imagine being held hostage in a foreign country for over a year. Now, they're eventually returned in 1980, I think, when Iraq invades Iran, and Ayatollah decides he's got to come to some. He's got to, try and salvage this. So all 52 of the hostages are returned safely, but the U.S. ends up assisting Iraq in their war against Iran, which takes place for about 8 or 9 years, and it's deadly and brutal, and nothing changes. Like no territory was changed. They invaded Iran, got land. Iran countered, got into Iraq, took land, and then Iraq pushed them back. Finally, they signed a ceasefire. But this is a huge mess, and we'll talk a little bit about it tomorrow. But the U.S. actually sold weapons to both Iraq and Iran. Like, they helped both sides. They helped Iraq more, and they helped strengthen Iraq's power in the Arab world. By the way, anyone want to take a guess at who the leader of Iraq was that we assisted? Saddam Hussein. America's two greatest enemies of the last 20, 25 years were two men that were given money and weapons by the U.S. in Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. We chose to back them to fight against past enemies, and then they ended up turning into enemies of our own. And we knew they would. Like, they never even pretended to be allies with us. They just accepted our money and weapons. Like, we were like, hey, take these weapons to fight our enemies, and they're like, all right, cool, we'll do that. We still hate you. And we said, oh, I'm sure you guys will warm up to us later. And they're like, no, I doubt it. We'll probably hate you forever. And we'll probably be at war. And we said, don't worry about that now. And then what happens? Bin Laden leads Al Qaeda, and they perpetrate the attacks on 9/11, and then we go to war in Iraq and depose of Hussein. Anyways, that's just further mistakes we've made in our past. Now we get to President Ronald Reagan and his concept of rollback, which was trying to make peace for past issues and mistakes. He creates the Reagan Doctrine, which was his plan to provide support for any movements against communism. So we're not going to start anything against communism, but if countries want to fight it, they want to roll back on it, like in Eastern Europe, then we can help them. And it establishes his peace through strength, basically intimidating the America's enemies not to do anything foolish. Operation Cyclone, which is a specific operation to support bin Laden and the Mujahideen rebels in Afghanistan, which at the time we saw as a success, but later on bites us in the keister. Lebanon in 1983. The Lebanese Civil War was going on. Lebanon's a tiny little country in Western Asia, borders Israel and Syria. They were going through a civil war with I guess you could call them extreme Islamists, trying to overthrow the more Christian tolerant government. And so UN soldiers were trying to be peacekeepers, and Syrian Islamists bombed one of the UN camps in Lebanon, killing 241 American peacekeepers, which we saw as an act of war. Now, the U.S. doesn't go to war, but they do condemn Syria and place sanctions on them. And then Grenada, small island, kind of in the Caribbean. It's about 100 miles north of Venezuela. They had a communist government, or they had a communist overthrow, so they installed a communist government. And then there was just a lot of violence that ensued, and Grenada had about 100 American med school students there. They were performing some kind of med school course. And so when violence erupts, President Reagan says that he needs to protect American interests and American people in Grenada. So Operation Urgent Fury is an American first bombing campaign and then overthrow of the communist government in Grenada. Around the world, it's met with some disdain. People thought that America overstepped its boundaries, but most Grenadian citizens appreciated it. They wanted it. They wanted a government that would be democratic and give them a voice, and they were pleased by the fact that the American bombardment and overthrow resulted in very few civilian casualties. So overall, It was a success, and Grenada has been democratic ever since. And then we have the Libya bombings. Libya had been another enemy of the U.S. for years because of Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi was another Islamist who wanted to rise to power in the Arab region. He bombed a disco in West Berlin because it was a popular hangout place for American troops that were in West Berlin. And so America retaliates by bombing Libya. Nothing major comes out of it, like it doesn't turn into full-scale war, but it does hamper Libya in basically stopping them from doing anything rash immediately, but it does motivate Gaddafi to build an empire against the U.S., which he takes a few years, but he does end up causing a problem later on. Now, our central question: what was the Camp David Accords? Real simple. Who was there? What was it for? What did it do? I know today went a little long. I apologize. I'm trying to finish this, but that'll be it. We have a Zoom meeting tomorrow. I want everybody there at 2 p.m. Everybody there. I'm going to give you a rundown with what the official plan is for the last 4 or 5 days of the school year, and we will be good to go. I appreciate you guys listening in. Have a terrific day.